We're going to get the coalition meeting started here. That's a cue for our audio and video people, so they know we're starting. So welcome everybody to the coalition meeting. This is our last meeting of the year. Seems impossible, but all of us on the coalition, and I'm sure all in the audience, we should wish each other a blessed holiday season. So it is upon us. All right. So let's start out with something we haven't done in a while, and I thought since we'd had some changes in membership and folks are sitting in for others, we'd go around and just say briefly where you're from and why you're here. So we'll start down at the end.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Nix. I'm the Associate Director for the South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, or SCIDVASA. That's easier to say. So.
I'm Jennifer Butler. I'm with the Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Office of Mental Health.
I'm Bill Lindsay. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI South Carolina, and I lost a son to suicide 6.5 years ago.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rodney Odham. I am the Health and Wellness Coordinator with the South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs.
Hey, good morning. I'm Susan Jackson with the South Carolina Department of Public Health. Our two surveillance programs, one of which is violent death, which have lots of data that we hope to provide to our partners.
And I'm Jessica Kobernick with the South Carolina Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, Office of Mental Health, and I oversee the suicide prevention program there.
Bob Bank, I'm the Interim Director of the Office of Mental Health. Ordinarily, I have a legislator next to me to give me moral support. Gilda Cobb-Hunter isn't here today, but Connie Rouse is here today, and she's down at the end there. So thank you very much for being here.
Good morning. Sarah Goldsby, Office Director of the Office of Substance Use Services at the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities.
Good morning. Chris Kunkel, Deputy Director for the Department of Corrections.
Good morning, Amy McCullough, probate judge for Richland County. Probate judges are involved in some level of suicide prevention as we handle commitments, emergency and non-emergency, and we also have several mental health courts across the state.
Hi, I'm Brian Apple. I'm the Suicide Prevention Program Manager for the Columbia VA Healthcare System, representing our Charleston and Columbia programs.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Ernest Brown Jr., Deputy Director of Facility Rehabilitation and Health Services with the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice. And in that capacity, I oversee all of our clinical services, chaplaincy services, and health services that are provided across all four of our 4 secure facilities.
Hi, my name is Jessica Seal. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health Initiatives and Workforce Development at the South Carolina Office of Rural Health, and I lost my father to suicide in 1992.
Good morning. My name is Bethany Baynard. I'm with the Office of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and I'm with the Mobile Crisis Program.
Hi, good morning. I'm Michelle Bassett. I'm the new Area Director for South Carolina for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Good morning, everyone. I am Christopher Allen. I work with the South Carolina National Guard. We lose more service members and veterans to suicide than we do to combat, so I'm just here to keep the voice raised. Thank you.
I'm Eileen Schell with Mental Health America of South Carolina.
Okay. Thank you very much. So when I got here today, Jessie gave me a list of things that she thought you would be interested in. So pardon me to some extent if I read some of this, because I have not memorized this lengthy list of announcements. So we're going to start with the Suicide Prevention Program at Office of Mental Health. The Suicide Prevention Program is operating 3 SAMHSA grants. I'll just say that It's an approach. Several of the grants relate to youth suicide. Then we have zero suicide farm work across multiple systems, and the 988 improvements. And we all know how important 988 is, and I'll touch on that issue a little bit later too. Also, we have this year, Suicide Prevention Program has supported suicide prevention trainings for over 4,000 individuals and community outreach through events, one-on-one connections, and partnerships for over 5,000 additional individuals. The current answer rate for South Carolina on our 988 services is 87.6. We have a target of 90%. We reached that one time, or almost.
In June.
In June, yeah. But just as we approach our goal, the volume goes up. And so I guess that's really a good thing in a sense, because we want people to call us, obviously. So good work there. When we started the expansion of 988, we were at about 58% in-state answering. So we've made a tremendous improvement. And of course, answering in-state means you know what the resources are. So that's an important key to success for these calls, not to go to other states. All right, let's see now. The First Responder Support Team. A new contract was created between the South Carolina Attorney General's Office for FRST clinicians, First Responder Support Team clinicians, to provide mental health services to the Attorney General's Office Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force staff. So as you can imagine, that staff, as many first responders do, have many trauma issues, difficulty with things that stay in their minds, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety and depression. So it's a very significant additional thrust on our support to help first responders. The First Responder Support Team has worked with 11 individuals and has done 101 debriefings so far. Okay, in our children and adolescent area, youth ask us to psychiatry, the short form being YAPI, continues to take calls from prescribers statewide. The purpose is to help general practitioners and pediatricians be able to manage patients that they're handling in their offices. So as you might imagine, that as you're treating someone with depression or anxiety, you may run into a situation where the medication's not working, or you need some advice on how to move forward with the case. So that's the purpose of the program. So we have seen an increasing call volume, and the program is 3 years or 4 years in? I don't know. Deb, how long have we been doing YAPI? 3. Okay. So it's a consultative attempt to improve quality of care. And as you might all imagine, I mean, there are way more children who are getting services in the community than just our mental health outlets. And so if we can help to keep those folks in treatment with their providers, it really is a way to handle the volume. So interesting approach to it. Okay. We have a 3-year grant from the Duke Endowment to support training in MDFT. So that's a new grant that is going to support that very successful treatment for youth and families struggling with behavioral issues, substance use, family dysfunction, holistic approach. So we're very glad to have that grant. Spartanburg Mental Health Center has a 1-year no-cost extension to continue its what's called the cafe up there, which is a place where young people can come to spend the day with our therapists and get support and hopefully not have an emergency room visit that isn't really needed or that we can somehow divert. So we're able to support those folks and hopefully avert it getting more serious and leading to suicide or suicidal thoughts. Okay, Jesse gave me some general updates. We've been doing a good many what are called SIM workshops. And Jesse, I'm going to let you say something about those.
Yeah, I'll kind of highlight. So this is where so they did one for Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester counties, and that was held in December up in North Charleston. And they had different representatives from the Office of Mental Health, local housing and homeless service providers, hospitals, law enforcement, school districts, and other partners participated. And it's an intensive workshop that results in a detailed action plan for addressing homelessness in that region. And this is not the only SIM event that's going to be happening across the state. There are going to be a total of 12 similar workshops over the next year, kind of focusing on that particular population in different areas. Some other areas are going to be Greenville, Horry, and Richland counties. So those are going to be coming up, and that was coming out of one of our mental health block grants.
Right, and these SIM events have different topics that might be most important to the community. We had a great SIM a couple months ago about jail diversion. So these are all opportunities for communities to get together and problem solve, come up with ideas and things they can move forward on. Okay, let's see. I'm going to say a few words about the BHDD budget process. I've talked to you a little bit about this before. Because the three agencies that came together in BHDD previously had done separate budgets, this was an opportunity for us to do our budget together for the first time. So we were given a little extra time by the governor's office to get it done because it was a new endeavor, right, Sarah? So we met together numerous times to come up with the most important items that we feel will forward the mission of the new agency to have no wrong door policies and also to be more efficient in other ways. I thought I'd just highlight a couple things that I had in mind to tell you about. One of the requests will be, again, in the OMH inpatient and forensic area. You might remember last year we were able to get funding to help us stay afloat in forensics and begin to work more diligently on jail diversions. So this year the funding request is for similar purpose. As you might imagine, it's expensive to run a forensic hospital, and it's also very important to try and divert persons who are in a jail for minor charges and try to get a different solution than restoration and going back to trial. A lot of these folks, as we have talked about before, by the time we would even do a restoration, they've spent more time in a local jail than the sentence would be for the crime we're talking about. So these diversion efforts are extremely important in terms of giving the right service to the right population. And those who have, done the more serious crimes, that's why we have restoration and attempts to get folks to where they can participate in their legal process. But we don't want to be doing that for minor crimes done by folks who have serious mental illness. So that's been an important thrust for a couple of years and continues to be a very important mission. We also are seeking, I guess, what I would call replacement funding for some of the grants that have run out for our 988 system. We were fortunate to get those grants to get things off the ground, but we'll need some additional funding to keep this great effort going. I know Sarah and I were talking about the importance of 988. I don't know if you want to add something to that, Sarah, just in terms of your thoughts about 988.
Just in terms of it's been so heavily invested in to develop this foundational system that I think the priority for its continuation is really just the highest. And like Dr. Banks said, more and more folks calling and demonstrating its efficacy and demonstrating need across the state, not only in our state, but across the country. I think every state right now is kind of looking to support 988 in their own ways. And so it feels pretty critical as we try to address the population's needs.
Right. And we're really just getting going. People know what 988 is now, and it's something we want to continue for it as far as we can see into the future. You might remember we had talked a little bit about the DOJ case that had to do with community supports, and at that time the Department of Mental Health and our sister agency, Medicaid, worked with the DOJ over a good number of years. It's been 3 years, actually, since they came to South Carolina to look at our system, but we've been in negotiation for about 2 years. So I've asked Deb Blaylock to give us a summary because we're almost at the end of the negotiation, close to a settlement, and I think it's highlighted some things that we wanted to do, and we're going to ask for some funding for those things. But also, I think it's a settlement that won't be onerous. So, Deb, maybe just give a little bit of timeline and where we are and how our asks in the budget will foster that.
Over $3 million for several expansion projects, I guess I would say, because none of it was new. But we got money to hire housing coordinators at every mental health center, full-time housing coordinators. We got money to expand mobile crisis teams at 4 mental health centers to ensure that we had 2 teams who could respond simultaneously out in the community 24/7. And we received some funding to hire some more peer support specialists. The goal that we have is for every mental health center to have a minimum of 2 peer support specialists, and if they have an assertive community treatment team, to have a minimum of 3 peer support specialists. So that money supports that. We also received money to support the assertive community treatment teams at all the mental health centers. So, or not all, at 13 mental health centers. ACT teams are either considered small or large teams. Small teams have 9 staff, large teams have 11 staff. And so the funding we requested was to support 1 staff person at each mental health center. So it didn't come close to supporting the entire team, but there was some support, so that was helpful. So that was in our 26 budget ask. And the 27 budget ask, there is a request to continue to support the ability to have 4 more teams at the mental health centers. So eventually all mental health centers will have 2 teams that can go out simultaneously. But this year we're asking for 8 more staff people for 4 more teams because we deploy people in pairs of 2. And then continuing the ask for the peer support specialists. The reason we broke it over a total of 3 years, because there'll be another ask for the 28 budget, is because we knew we would have difficulty recruiting that many staff in the course of 1 year. So that's why that ask is that way. So that's...
Deb, what do you think about where we are with the settlement at this point, coming to a conclusion?
Oh my gosh, we are this close. We are so close. The government shutdown obviously delayed things, but I expect in the next 2 weeks that we will be done. Yeah.
Right, and where we are right now, we feel it's a fair look at how to help people stay in the community, not visit our emergency rooms, and hopefully keep people out of the hospital, and in as independent a place to live as they can.
Yes.
And I think we have some definitions that we've developed through this process that are fair approximations of what we would say.
Yes, there's a recognition now that community residential care facilities do constitute community living, and they are classified as assisted living, and for some people, that's as independent as it's going to get.
Right, and we do query our patients that live
Quarterly.
in those facilities about if they'd like to make a move to some other facility or move into the community in a different way on a regular basis. So, and then I think the other thing is that the reporting process will be fairly simple. We'll be reporting on certain parameters, but there will be no monitors.
Right. And just to your point, Dr. Bank, about us querying patients who live in CRCFs, we currently have, OMH currently has a little over 700 individuals who live in community residential care facilities. And out of those, a little bit over 700 have an interest in moving.
Okay, well, thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you. Yes, sir.
So just a couple other items. We have a request to continue funding for our efforts to establish jail programs in Orangeburg and Berkeley counties. We've been in the process of moving ahead with those in the current year, but we want to continue with that and establish programs there so we can help with the not only treatment process but the diversion process. And then some dollars to continue alternative transportation. Some of you might not know about alternative transportation, and the purpose of it is that when patients are in the emergency room around the state, if they're going to be transported to a psychiatric facility, in the past they've always had to go with law enforcement. And the legislature, in their wisdom, felt that patients could travel in another way that would be more humane, and for those who are not overly agitated, provide a transport that's much more, I guess, acceptable to patients than being in a police car. So we've had our program of alternative transportation, which is a private entity that operates vehicles that are secure, but not with handcuffs and all the other things that the officers are required to use. And we've had great success with these transports when the emergency room doctor feels someone can be transported in that way, and it saves a tremendous amount of law enforcement time as well. So we're going to be asking for dollars that have been one-time dollars to see if we can get them on the recurring side of things and keep the program going, because I think it's very helpful to folks who are already experience a lot of trauma. Okay. Any questions on any of those items? Bill.
Just got one for Jesse, and maybe you could just let the group up to speed on 988. 988, when people call in, there may be some special categories where people could hit a button and go to that, and what classification of folks has the most completed suicides?
Okay, so when a person calls 988, there's 3 options when you call. You can either press 1 and you'll get connected directly to the veterans line. You can press 2 and you'll get connected to the Spanish. You can press 0 and just immediately bypass that and go directly to be routed to a call center here in South Carolina that's answering what is the base 988 lifeline. Outside of that, a person can also reach out if you go to 988sc.org, or if you're not in South Carolina, you can always still use that, but there's also the National 988 webpage, and you can do the ASL Now, where you can get connected via video phone if you are deaf or hard of hearing and use sign language. And then you can also chat or text 988 as well through there. As far as your question about people who have died by suicides, I actually did just get some updated, it's CDC 2024 data is still in its provisional release right now, but for what we have with their provisional numbers is the majority of the people in South Carolina who are dying by suicide are older white males right now.
Okay. And the reason I was asking that was we did have another hotline for the LGBTQ community, which has nationally, I guess that's probably the highest rate of suicide. And I didn't know how we were handling that here.
Yeah.
If somebody has those questions.
Yeah. So we still encourage everybody to continue to reach out to the Lifeline, and the Trevor Project is still active. That was who was answering the Press 3 option. So they can always still call the Trevor Project if they prefer to speak to somebody specific to that particular population's needs. And all 988 counselors that we are training in South Carolina are trained to answer for people across a lot of different needs or backgrounds, and they do get some training to help with different populations that may be at risk of suicide.
Thank you. I just wanted you to let people know that that issue is there and that you've done some things to help us take care of it.
And SAMHSA did send out, the Trevor Project shared their toolkit with SAMHSA, and SAMHSA had distributed that to all of their call centers that are currently in routing.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to Dennis Gillen, Half a Sorrow Foundation Executive Director. He's going to talk to us about lost teams. Welcome.
I'm going to let my IT person take care of things. Thank you, Miranda.
We all need a person like that.
We all do. We all do, especially the older you get. This is like a homecoming of sorts, and then thank you for having me. It's so good to see so many compassionate faces, and I'm sure a lot of committees meet in this room, but none more compassionate than this one. So it's an honor to be here, and I'm just checking my sound guy. How's my sound back there? Good. That's the guy you got to keep happy today. I've learned that quickly. My name is Dennis Gillen, and I run a foundation called the Half a Sorrow Foundation out of Greenville, but it doesn't matter where I am. I go where I need to go, and. But I'm going to make the case for LOST teams, which stands for Local Outreach for Suicide Survivors. And it's important that we take into consideration postvention, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But before I go, I love our state motto. I had to put it on the first slide, While I Breathe, I Hope. And this presentation's full of hope. Before I get started, everyone has a story to tell. If you're doing any sort of suicide prevention work or behavioral health, for that matter, you probably got in it because of personal reasons. And mine is personal. I lost two brothers to suicide, 11 years apart, and that's not why we're here today. But for years I couldn't even look at this photo. That's my brother Mark and my brother Matthew. And I remember one time I threw it out there on Reddit and I got it colorized. And it was a black and white photo, and they colorized it. When it came back, I started crying because I never saw it in color. Now I see this photo as you heal, as you get further away. I lost Mark in '83 and I lost Matthew in '94. And as you get further away from the event, you start doing what I'm doing now, is try to help others. And now I look at this photo with a little different light, and I want you to see what I see. I see a little boy there with the basketball. He was so excited to get outside and play that he forgot to zip up his pants. And if you raise boys, that's a lifelong struggle. In fact, I'm going to check now. I'm good. All right, so there you go. But that's not why I'm not. This is not the reason why I'm here today. I'm here to tell you what I've been doing with this idea that's percolating in my head. I'm part of two national groups. One is called Linked by Legacy, and as you can guess by the name, it's nonprofits that have lost somebody to suicide. And now there's a national group spawned out of Ohio called NSPAN, National Suicide Prevention Action Network. Again, nonprofits getting together. And I kept hearing this thing about lost teams, lost teams, lost teams. And you hear it enough, you go, what is that? What are these people doing? And it was out of good friends in Nebraska, out of the Kim Foundation, they brought me up to speed, is that if someone dies by suicide, they show up at the person's house, unannounced, even at the scene. And I thought, wow, I could have used that when Mark died. I could have used that when Matthew died. So to get our arms around this, I started doing some exploration, and I said, how do we get this data? We just heard from Jesse, and suicide prevention data, it lags. We're in 2025. We got the official data is 2023. The provisional is 2024, and that's just the nature of the beast. It just takes time to get this data. So I was sitting there thinking, who knows best about what's going on in South Carolina than the coroners? Let's start there. So we have a very good coroners association in South Carolina, a very receptive group. We have 46 counties, and it seems like every county has a coroner. So let me start there. So I put together 3 calls. This is part of the pre-work over the summer. Same content on these 3 calls, but I gave them different times to log in. And I threw it out to the coroners, and we had really good participation. I bragged about the work you all are doing, by the way, because a lot of our coroners really didn't know much about 988. They knew it was out there, but they didn't know some of the stuff you're doing. So it was a really good dialogue. It wasn't a monologue. It wasn't me telling them this is what we need. It was a good dialogue, and that dialogue continues. In fact, just yesterday I told them, and I sent out the link for this meeting, I told them I'm coming to this meeting, and some of them may be online right now. And I asked them as a group, I said, just quick favor. You owe me nothing, but quick favor. Are suicides up or down in your county? That's it. Simple respond. I told them, don't reply all, because we all do that. Please don't do that. Just reply to me. And for the most part, up, as you can imagine, poor Anderson County, and they're good folks down there. They're double. They're running double. I'm not telling you anything that wasn't on the news. I'm not. It was on WYFF, and there's some newspaper articles written about it. Sumter County is double. And then you some really nice stories. Pickens County, where you all did a lot of work with the governor's challenge and stuff, they're trending downward, which proves to me we can do this stuff. In 2019 and 2020, suicides as a whole in the U.S. went down. So we can do this. And we're hoping for a downward trend in South Carolina. So I get 3 calls with these folks. And I love PowerPoint because with my ADHD, I could put notes in there to myself. And this is a note to me to thank the folks in the suicide prevention program. Jesse and Miranda popped on there. And I appreciate that they were on all 3 calls. So I can't do it without you. I'm an army of one, but we need to do this together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I really appreciate you being on those calls. That meant a lot. It meant a lot to the coroners, too, that the state was on the call. And what I did on the call, I told them some of the resources we have. And I was bragging about you all in this room. Office of Suicide Prevention Program. When I figure out the new acronym, you're going to change it anyway. So you know who you are, BHDDD.com. I don't care what you're called. You're doing great work. Whatever the title is, a friend of mine has like 19 business cards, and he says, I never left the office. The name changed. It's the same job. Some of you guys are laughing at that, but it's true. So I bragged about you all. I told them the resources. The mobile crisis was a big one. When I brought that up, and I think people were really pleased to hear that South Carolina has that. And it was nice to hear from Debbie and some of the budget stuff, the expansion of that program. That's a really cool program to have in our state. And we told them about the 988 call centers, the 2 of them. And at the time, it was 88%. And now, like a month later, it bumped up to 90%. You were kind enough, Jesse, to tell us that on the phone call. And then the volume goes up, right? So it's hard to keep that 90%. Well, you're doing great work there. I told them about the great network of nonprofits. Some are in this room today. I told them about AFSP. Michelle, you were on the call, your institution. Eileen, we talked about Mental Health America, and Bill, of course, you can't have this conversation without NAMI. And then, of course, because my call, I threw my foundation on there because, I ran the call. We talked about survivor groups. Suicide's a complicated grief, and I've gone to some general grief classes as a survivor of suicide loss. And it's interesting, you go to a grief, like a grief share or something at a local church or something like that, and then you say suicide, and all of a sudden you can feel the air gets sucked out of the room because it's different. It's different. It comes with it's a complicated grief. That's probably the best way to say it. So I started a loss group based on need. The good folks at Mental Health America in Greenville, we coordinated. Theirs is on Tuesday, and mine's on Thursday. And if we do it right, someone who's really suffering can go to 3 different meetings. We're not competing. We're trying to figure this out together. And some are online. And the good folks at AFSP, if you want to find a support group, your website's phenomenal. You type in your zip code and how many miles you want to go, and it's there. So thank you for doing that. And I also talked about Chaplain John Denny with the Guard. He has a group called Philos, where they do postvention work. And that's what we're going to focus on this week. And I just saw John last week, and we did a postvention. And I don't want to mention the community. I don't want to mention where we were. But somebody died on Monday, and John and I and 2 counselors. I am not a counselor. I'm more victim impact. And if you are a counselor, thank you for what you do. But we brought counselors with us. I will never go anywhere without a pro, right? And we went and administered. We lost someone on Monday. We were at the school on Tuesday. And it's important work. It's very important work. And then I shared with them the resources we do not have. And this is the LOSS team, the local outreach to suicide survivors. And this is an important piece because postvention is prevention. And I truly wish, think about it. I have multiples in my family. If somebody would have showed up when Mark died, Mark was my older brother, and kind of guided us a little bit, I'm pretty sure we would have Matthew. Just gut feeling, because we would have known how to grieve over the one. And a risk factor for anybody in suicide is a previous loss. That's a risk factor. Family history, that's a risk factor. So we want to go in there and do this. So I did that call with the coroners, and then I got to go to Omaha where they had the official LOSS meeting, which was really cool. You want to talk about, you all are awesome, right? This community. The LOSS community is incredible. Just a bunch of caring folks, and look at this. He looks like a grandfather. It's Frank Campbell. He's the guy who started this whole thing out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's almost riding off into the sunset right now. He's about ready to retire, but they won't let him. They keep, when your misery becomes your mission, you never really retire. But he wants it so bad. I think I might have caught him at his last meeting, but he said that last meeting, so he's going to come back next year. But he talked about this model, and this guy was brilliant because what he did, and think about this in South Carolina, there was a death by suicide in Baton Rouge at a hotel. Somebody used the facility, they checked in, and then they never checked out. And so everyone's there on the scene, and locally here, the coroners, they get a hold of the family. They may hand them a pamphlet or something, like after a suicide or something that, a generic, and then good luck. But being there, you're in a fog. You don't know what people gave you. You have no clue. It gets filed, and you don't find it for months. This guy said to the people there, goes, does anyone talk to the hotel staff? They're the ones who found him. And said, no, we don't. We're packing up. We're ready to leave. He went back in there and administered to the staff. And that's when he said, LOSS teams. That's how it was born. Out of need. Like they were hurting. And no one even thought about him. But it's the ripple effect of a suicide. So there he goes. He's off and running. And Louisiana does a really good job with this. Here's the LOSS map at the moment. They're up to about 23. I checked this morning, 24 states. Somebody's on there. There's a little void there. In the southeast with all the green. Green means you don't have one. We're going to go purple in South Carolina. Let's do it. It's not that hard. There's 24 people out ahead of us. Not ahead of us. It's not a competition. Who have showed us the way. Who are a compassionate group that will help us get to where we need to go. And I want to start this up on a trial basis. I live in Greenville. I'm not too far from Anderson. Hopefully the Greenville coroner's office, I sent them the note, and they said they'll be online. I was talking to them recently this week about this, and I was looking at my computer. My computer is a Hewlett-Packard, and Hewlett-Packard started in the garage. 2 guys in the garage, right? Right now with LOSS teams, we're in the garage. We're formulating it. We're doing all the work. I got a call on December 22nd with a consulting service. How to recruit volunteers. What's the application look like? What does self-care look like for the volunteers? All these factors. But there's this amazing community that will help us build this thing. And they're up and running. I just met with the good folks in Tennessee 2 weeks ago at International Survivor Loss Day, which was the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Many of you attended that. They just started. So they're like a little bit, but they're like, hey, anything you need, give us a call. That's how this community works. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to borrow it. And they don't even borrow it. They'll give it to us. They'll give it to us. So there it is. Our motto is clear. Postvention is prevention. I said it once, I could say it 20 times. It truly is. If we do it right. And I'm thinking about that school last week. There were hurting souls in that building. We don't want another one. The Gillen family, when Mark died, there were hurting souls in that house. We don't want another. We had another one. Don't want that. So this is really important that we get off on the board here. And I got some stuff here to prove that I was an alma. Just some, if you want to see it, this is the consultant I'm going to do. What is a loss team? There's hope after suicide. All this stuff boils down to this motto. It really does. Postvention is prevention. And in South Carolina, with the supportive team that we have, the collective wisdom in this room, it wouldn't be that hard to get this up and running. It really wouldn't. It's a no-brainer. And I'm willing to put the resources of Half a Sorrow Foundation behind it. So here I am. Where am I today? I just want to know if anyone's doing this that you know about, because I'm an army of one. Someone may be doing this that I don't know about. And we need to know about it. So if you're in any of these counties and there's a group of if you know of a group of moms in Aiken that do this, let me know. And then we'll formalize it and get them properly trained and learn from them. So if you know of anyone, find me and say, there's a group doing this in the PD and wherever it is, let me know. I'm looking for support to start a trial with the goal of a statewide rollout. Like everything else, once we get out of the garage, we got to get through the driveway, right? So let's try it. My good folks, the Anderson County Coroner's Office has been very receptive to doing something like this. They're also staring down, double the suicides they had last year. So yeah, you want to talk about a receptive audience? They are one of them, and I love that. They're proactive. They were, they're the ones saying that we got to do something. So if I could do it there, maybe Greenville, where I live, and then try it, learn, and then slowly build out. And this is a wonderful state. It doesn't take us too long to get from one side to the other. We can make this happen. I am looking for volunteers, and there'll be a vetting process because this is a tall order. And I remember when I was on the board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, we wouldn't take a volunteer, and it may be still in place until a year after the event because there's a lot of healing that has to go on. You may have somebody come up to you and say, listen, I lost somebody to suicide last month. I want to do something right now. Like, woo, 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 woo. You got to heal first. So there'll be a vetting process in terms of qualifications and how far from the event and what have you done to self-care and manage that. So if you know of any volunteers or you yourself out there in TV land, wherever you are, on the webinar or in this room, if you say, this is something I think I can do, and it would be in pairs. You never go by yourself. It would be somebody with lived experience and a volunteer, or it could be both with lived experience, survivor suicide loss. Not lived experience, that's another thing, but they have a voice at this table as well. But you always go in pairs, and you go unannounced, believe it or not, to the house. And the reason you do that is because they're never going to call you. And you're going to knock on the door, and you're going to say, I know exactly what you're going through. And they're going to say, bull crap, and then you're going to say, yeah, let me tell you. And then what often these loss survivors tell me is they just sit with the people. They don't say much. They just sit with them. And maybe they give them a hope box, like I think the suicide prevention program, you have these boxes, maybe you drop it off, but you're eye to eye, belly to belly saying, we're here for you. And everybody in this house right now is at risk. We don't say that, but we're thinking that. And we say, we're here for you. So that's what we're looking for in the volunteers. And if you know of any grants that are out there, I heard a couple things, money's tight, I get it. But we just need to get this thing. It won't take much. And on the way down here, I was listening to a podcast that Indiana used their Garrett Lee Smith, some money. They wrote it in there. They didn't just use it. They wrote it into the grant and got approved that they could do postvention. So if you're applying for any grants or anything in this arena, I just want you to consider postvention. How we get there, we get there. But if you know of one that I don't know about, let me know. And I'm going to end on this. Two great slogans. One is mine. That's not mine. It's my foundation's. It's a shared joy is a double joy. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. That's where we get our name for our foundation. And here we're going to share our sorrow. We're going to cut it in half. 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 Where are my math majors? Will I ever get to zero? No, right? Everybody, the non-math majors put their head down like, don't pick on me. Math may not be your strong suit, but you remember this. There's always going to be a remainder, right? A half of a half. You never get to zero. And that's okay. We don't want our sorrows to get to zero. I want to remember my brothers. The day I forget about them, the Grim Reaper standing behind me saying, Dennis, it was a good run. Because I feel. And the other quote, that's a great quote, is, while I breathe, I hope. I'm back to that. That's where we started. That's where we're going to end. Full circle. I'm hopeful that the people in this room can make this happen. You can guide me along the way. There's brilliant minds in here. And I look over to my right. There's my podcast host over there, Jessica Seal. We have a podcast called It's a Tough Subject on postvention. It's in this room. It's out in that webinar. We can make this happen in South Carolina. It's not a big ask. It's not a heavy lift because there's people who went before us and did all the heavy lifting, and they're willing to help us. I just want you guys to bless it in a sense and say, how can we help? That's all I'm here to ask today. And then one day, if you find a couple quarters in the couch or something, you find some money somewhere, that would be great too, because we had to administer this in my statewide rollout. It started, the suicide prevention program started out as a grant funded, and then it becomes an integral part of the state. And look at the success we're having there with the calls and all that stuff. So that's where we are today. That's the case for lost teams. I hope you all agree. If you want to stay in touch, there we are, halfasorrow.org or dennis@halfasorrow.org. Find me, seek me out. And I try to stay under 15 minutes. There's an old adage in public speaking. If you want me to speak for 15 minutes, no, if you wanted me to speak for an hour, give me a day to prepare. If you want me to speak for 15 minutes, give me 2 days to prepare, because you got to take a lot to make it a little. I hope that all made sense, and I hope I stayed on time. Any questions?
Hi. I lived in Greenville for 17 years, and do you know Buncombe Street Unite? Well, it's Buncombe Street Methodist Church.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so they have a Stevens ministry there, started by the Lutheran Church. It's actually all across the country. And I know they have a ministry there because I was one of the originators there. And for real reasons, they might be interested in what you're doing. And there is a CISC fund that can be given to persons within that community. So if you connect it with all of the Stephen ministries, because what you're doing, that's a small part of it, but it is a part of it. You might be able to, I'm not saying that this body should not fund you, but I'm just saying extra. They may take a personal interest in what you're doing, and I'll give you somebody when you leave to call.
That is exactly why you come to these committee meetings. These connections are out there. I never would have thought of that, but I'm familiar with the Stephen Ministry and pastoral care, and brilliant idea. So you and I will talk after this.
We have one more question here.
Thanks, Dennis. You were always authentic and always very inspirational. So I appreciate hearing this idea today. I guess I have a question because I'm not extremely educated in postvention strategies, and so I'm curious to know if these other lost teams across the nation have established best practices for postvention in settings with just families. In juxtaposition to what I heard you say, like a school postvention, right, and how those things might differ. And then I'm wondering if there's established trainings or best practices, and if you envisioned lost teams addressing postvention in schools or other institutional settings, as well as like a family situation.
Great question, Sarah. And I think ideally there are resources. I just joined yesterday. There's a community of lost survivors, and I had to join it, and it cost me $25, so you guys owe me $25. No, the foundation, but they have all this sharing stuff, and what you mentioned would be ideal, the family setting, like going to the house. There is some organizational postvention, like a school or a business, and when I was living here in Columbia, we did 2 businesses at one time. One was a local newspaper, and the other one was a local bar that lost a bartender. So there's organizational, but ideally it would be showing up at a family's house, that really is in a fog at the moment. And I will look up today the best practices. I have to be approved to be a member of that community. Then you get all these Google documents, you get all this stuff, you get the application for the volunteers, you get all this stuff. I'm telling you, this community is phenomenal in sharing. So I intend on finding out more about that, how it worked. There was a couple groups that would go to the scene. And I don't think I'm ready for that yet. I would prefer like a house visit, when with the family. And again, in my mind, that's how I envision it. You got mobile crisis, a lot going on at the scene. It's fuzzy, but I do know there's success stories there as well that people have helped. So that would be the ideal setting. I'll find out more for you about that.
And then I know we talked about this in the meetings with the coroners, but if we can help get them set up, we would like to give the post-vention support kits that my office makes to your teams when they go out. And that's something that I actually do with AFSP, because it has a lot of AFSP's resources in there for their Healing Conversations program. We have information about 988, mobile crisis, if somebody ever felt like they needed more help as well, or how to get connected. And then it's self-care items, because it's not just here are resources. We actually want to remind people to take care of themselves for it. And then we give a handwritten note, like you said, letting that person know they're not alone, because it can be very, very isolating after you have a suicide loss. So if we could give some of those kits, we can make them and give them and drop them off, just so you have some on hand.
I would love that. And I remember that came up during the call when you guys were in those kits. And I actually was thinking to hear, like, how do we buy them and all that stuff? Because there's a group that sells those Hope kits. But I'd love to see what you have assembled, because that's what you want to do. You want to go visit, and then there's this leave behind it. After we leave, they have somewhere to go. Now, the coroners, and I think I was talking to one of them, they have a type sheet they leave, with people, but a box or a kit or like something that's substantial that say, we're here for you. And then all the loss meetings and some of the AFSP stuff after suicide, and the Healing Conversations is one of the best programs on the planet. I'm a volunteer for that. And I think it's woefully underutilized, but it's a great program. If for those who don't know, if somebody loses somebody to suicide, they can contact the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and they would hook them up with somebody who's been on that path. So if it's a sibling, like in South Carolina, that's where I was used. They would say, Dennis, this person lost a brother or sister. Could you call them? And we would call them up. And some of the greatest work I've done was in that post-vention piece with Healing Conversations. It's really cool. And I said, my head's down, you're probably a volunteer for this. And it's a great program. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it.
I always wanted to say this. No further questions.
Okay, next we're going to move on to Lynn Bullock, president of the Jonathan Foundation. She's going to talk to us about the PD Coalition. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and appreciate so much the invitation. So we've been really busy with the Jonathan Foundation over the past 2 years. I recognize many faces that have played a significant part and made a significant contribution to our work. And both that we have engaged in with the annual Brighter Days Conference. Many of you have supported that, helped us with speaking and those kinds of things. And then off the heels of our conference, the Building Brighter Days Coalition. So it's not the PD Coalition, it's the Building Brighter Days Coalition is the formal name. And it is a suicide coalition for the PD. And when I say PD, we are talking the 12 counties of the PD. My day job is a regional nursing director for DPH, and then I run the family foundation of the Jonathan Foundation. I lost my son Jonathan to suicide 14 years ago now at the age of 17. And what I can tell you about that as lived experiences 14 years later, it's no different than it was if it happened yesterday. The pain does get better over time, but the desperate loss and missing him, that never changes. And I think a lot of us that do this work, we do this work because we refuse to let go. I am not a letting go thinker in terms of my philosophy of grieving. I'm a continuing bonds believer in that we are not separated and we don't have to let go. He's just in a better place now, and we'll be reunited one day. So because we're not living in the same dimension doesn't mean we're not both still living and we're not still connected. And so we do this work in his honor and his memory. And I consider that when he passed, the anointing on his life passed to mine, and I carry a double portion anointing to both live out the work of my life and the service of my life as well as his. And so you may see in our work a picture, if you do see a picture of me in terms of my role as foundation lead, you will see that it includes him. It's a picture of he and I because I consider I carry him with me in this work. But I'm going to talk to you today about the work of the Jonathan Foundation in collaboration with the Department of Public Health. You know, my employer has been good to unite with us, and then we carried out some deeper work that's specifically within DPH. Our partners, PD Mental Health and the Office of Mental Health, who have been phenomenal partners and supporters and enablers and provided resources and speakers. Can't say enough good things about PD Mental Health. And Medical University of South Carolina, particularly the Leatherman care team. Rob DuPont out of MUSC, who led the development of Leatherman, is still a very big part of it, has been a part of our conference as well as the Building Brighter Days Coalition from the beginning, and he is a star supporter and ambassador now for the Jonathan Foundation work. So the Building Brighter Days Coalition got started on the heels of the first annual Brighter Days Conference. I consider them God drops, the way sometimes things just, pop in. And actually, I was at the conference, and we were in the midst of a lot going on, and I had this, this drop to offer the opportunity for folks attending the conference this first year to join in a suicide coalition. And I was amazed at the end of the day when I walked back to the Jonathan Foundation table, and we had 4 pages of sign-ups. So the coalition was started on the heels of that first conference, and out of those signups, we had 43 individuals from 25 different organizations join the coalition. Since that time, we've added new members, and we have a very vibrant coalition doing some really deep and really good work in the suicide prevention space. We used a methodology called results-based accountability. This is part of DPH's influence in the work. I lead those efforts in the region for PD and am RBA certified. And so I'm also a quality practitioner by background, and a past academic where I teach quality and performance management. So we were able to bring this into the work of the coalition and use RBA, which is now very well recognized and being used by a lot of our community-based and social sector organizations as the preferred methodology for improvement in using teams to generate improvement. So we used RBA. It's a 5-step methodology where you really start with how are we doing, looking at the data, what's going on behind that data, what's the story behind this data, what's it telling us, who are partners, bringing those key partners together that have a role to play, and then, of course, doing traditional strategic planning, what will work to turn this curve on the data, and then what elements of that brainstorming are going to make it to our actual action plan. In terms of looking at that data and beginning with where are we now, this graph shows the trajectory of suicide in the PD. This is 22 years worth of suicide prevention data. This is coming out of Department of Public Health and Susan Jackson's office, a big supporter for our work. All of the data that we use is in collaboration with Susan's team and her staff. So we do have a EPI within the region that assists with that as well. And so this graph is showing that trajectory, and I don't have to share the data with you guys because you know it as well as I do. But what was striking to us about this trend graph is, if you notice, the dark green line reflects the rates of incidents in the PD, and you see that in 2022, not only is it on a progressive incline, but in 2022, our incidence rate exceeded both state and national levels. So when we got this data, after we'd already determined we were going to do this work, we took a look in the data and we got this graph, we were like, oh my gosh, what is this saying to us? It's saying now is the time. And so in terms of suicide totals by age group in the PD for this 22-year period, it was also striking in the 5 years prior to 22, there were 20 deaths by suicide by those aged 17 or younger. Those aged 10 to 14 accounted for 8 of the suicides, and those aged 15 to 17 accounted for 12. And we know suicide is an epidemic across the nation and the world. The Jonathan Foundation's focus is really on young adult and youth suicides, and so this was telling to us as well. The next step is what is the story behind the curve, and so our team took a deep dive into a root cause analysis. We used Susan's team to access all of the data available to us that would give us any insight on reasons, as well as we pulled in the CDC's risk and protective factors and the data that we could glean there. And really what the high points of this that drove our planning and the areas that we planned around were that of these suicides, the highest contributing factor was method of suicidality. And so we all know the more lethal the method, the higher completions you have, and 70% of the suicides in this data set were by firearm. So firearms are a significant contributing factor to this suicide epidemic. Then, interesting, of those in this data set, based on what the data will tell us, granted it is contingent upon the accuracy of the data that is inputted by the coroners or law enforcement or whoever is on the scene to report, only 27.7% had mental health problems. We would expect that number to be much higher. And then, even more shocking, less than 4% were under mental health treatment, less than 4%. And only 16.6% disclosed intent. So what did that say to us? It said these individuals are dying in silence. So our aim, it started with a focus that quickly evolved to a vision for establishing a suicide safety net across our community for the individual, across the prevention, intervention, treatment, and post-vention providers or post-vention space. And in this case, we're talking about post-stabilization, not post-completion. And this graphic just shows the concept of really engaging the home, the family, the church, the school, the behavioral health care team, community support systems, friends, social network, everyone you can pull in around that individual in prevention. And that work really starts with looking at what we're all doing now. So from our first year's plan, we came up with 8 strategic objectives or goals, and we have launched strategic initiative teams on those 8. Of them, I will say there's 2 that didn't make, so we have 6 very robust strategic initiatives in place. And we have several Building Brighter Day Coalition members in the group. Jessica is one who's playing a key part. Chris is one who's playing a key part. I hope I'm not missing somebody because we may have someone else in the room that I don't know is here. But the first of those, and one that I'm so super excited about, that both Jessica and Chris are a part of, the one that I think is going to have so much tremendous impact in the community, is we are aiming to develop a comprehensive community-based suicide awareness prevention training program that will include community ambassadors. And really what's happening here, everything evolves, is that we're establishing a community ambassador program. And part of the role of those community ambassadors are going to be the suicide awareness prevention training person, resource for that county, for a given county, for all 12 counties of the PD. And that role is what's happening with the role is it's expanding and evolving and growing. So we've already talked about other aspects of representation for those counties that these ambassadors will have. And so just at our last meeting, we started having conversation about suicide survivor loss, because in Darlington County, they have had 4 youth suicides this past year, and the last 3 of those were in pretty rapid succession. So they are reeling, and they're calling us, and they're calling others, and they're asking, what can we do? And we talked about that. We want to be able to have a response. My colleague left over here. Okay, I spoke to Dennis. Yeah, I was like, you and I need to talk. We want to have a response team. That has not been part of the work, but will be part of round 2's strategic planning effort. And how do we build in those loss teams? And we feel like we can use our community ambassador network to do that. We already have identified community ambassadors for most of the counties, the 12 counties of the PD. And that, as I said, that role then will evolve to be that training resource as well as potentially this loss resource and some other things. There's going to be some work I tell you about at the end of the presentation that is coming out of the Amen clinics and Dr. Daniel Amen's work that also we hope to engage the community ambassadors with. So that is going to be a very rich and robust role. We've decided through that initiative, there was a unanimous decision to adopt Living Works Safe Talk as our methodology, a unanimous decision to connect with Jessica and the Office of Mental Health, and then let our team run as a part of her team. So through that alignment, when Jessica and her team, her coordinators, have a call for suicide awareness prevention training within the PD, she will be able to use our community ambassador team as a resource. And likewise, she is going to be a resource for providing materials, Safe Talk materials, to that team. So we are so super excited about that alignment and feel like, you know, that is the perfect way to do this, and that is the way this work needs to be. We need to start doing this work. More organizations need to start doing the work that way. And as Dennis was asking, we need to connect and collaborate and not all try to do our own thing, because we can do more when we link arms and come together in community. Another strategic initiative is to develop a community-based gun safety program. And we're so excited about the plans that are evolving out of that team. So the first initiative there is going to be to have a day-long training at the gun, what do you call it? I'm losing my word. The shooting range. Yeah, the shooting range. In Darlington County, it's going to be the first county that this is piloted. And they're going to have a day-long training at the shooting range. They're going to have it for youth and young people, so 3 different age groups. They're going to bring in, I think it's the McGruff program for the really young kids, and have programs right on up to the older kids. They're going to have, you know, similar to what you would do with a Harvest Day event, but it'll, of course, be occurring at different times in the year. This one will be in the spring, in April. The first version of that community-based training on gun safety, really just inviting the community and specifically targeting these 3 segments of youth to come out and learn about gun safety and to hand out gun locks and teach parents the importance of using gun locks. So whereas we're not getting into the political debate on whether to carry a gun or not, that's a personal right and decision, we are asking and going to be asking even more strongly, our communities to engage with us in gun safety and carrying those guns responsibly, because of the clear evidence that access to guns is increasing incidence of suicide. And in fact, with my child, he didn't have a gun, and he didn't use a gun in our home, but it only took him 15 minutes to get out of our house and get to someone that he knew had one and access it. Moving then from our community-based initiatives to our education-based initiatives, one is to implement annual risk assessment screening for all students, and within that initiative, I'm delighted to be able to share that the Florence School District 1 they have already adopted and implemented risk assessment screening for the middle school and conducted that risk assessment screening for the middle school. And they had so many kids screened at risk, they took a couple days after that to do follow-up and intensive counseling with those kids who screened at risk. They hope to use that pilot, which is in collaboration with CareNova, to extend the effort to the upper schools, middle and high. Implement Handle with Care is a part of the strategic initiatives, and for Florence School District 1, Rebecca Williams McGee has them poised to implement. So we're just waiting on the superintendent's agreement. He's asked for a pause on that, so this one's on hold, but they have everything in place to implement Handle with Care when they get that approval. In terms of crisis intervention, we've got a fair amount of work going on here. One is to look at the process for mobile transport during crisis in the PD. We've got some unique issues, I think, within the PD because we're hearing from other areas that their mobile transport is going much more smoothly. But in our case, with the young people, with students, the school system is telling us when we call for mobile transport or we call for EMS, there is this debate over whose responsibility it is to pick up the student, and no one's wanting to assume that responsibility because it's a little more hairy when it's not an individual who it doesn't need permission of a parent. So most of the time, the school's having to call the parent and get the parent transport, but if the parent says, oh, they're fine, they don't need to go to the emergency room or to Leatherman or somewhere, the PD mental health, and be screened, then it kind of ties the hands of the school behavioral health team who've already screened the student and determined that they are at risk. So there's a team working on that, and really that team is about clarifying processes and responsibilities and getting ownership across all partners involved with that. And that's led by Nadine Livingston out of PD Mental Health, so that's led by Mental Health. The next, in terms of crisis intervention, is we have a program to provide SPEC medical scholarships to complex cases through a generous donor in the PD. We have funding for, we had funding for 5 because Dr. Amen spoke as our keynote at the first conference and donated his speaker fees, and we garnered 5 free SPEC scans out of that. Then we had a generous donor who donated 50 additional coverage for 50 additional SPEC scans to the tune of $250,000 at the second conference. She stood up and made this donation. So we have 50 of those remaining. We've had about 5 kids go through. They were all students at Florence School District 1 in the Compass Academy. And if you know anything about the Compass Academy, it's an innovative program in and of itself where they are taking the kids who can no longer go to school because they've been put out of school because of mental health issues. They're bringing them into day school at the Compass Academy. And so these kids that have been referred, they get referred to the Change Your Brain Foundation at Amen Clinics. They are personally screened by Dr. Amen because he is so engaged in our work. And they have all been approved, and he said they were indeed very complex cases that needed SPEC brain scanning to determine what was going on. So those cases are in treatment with the Amen Clinics now. The last is to design an effective transition planning process that bridges to the postvention or post-acute providers. And this is being led by the Leatherman Center. Rob's a part of this. Elizabeth is part of this. Tim, if you know them, the leaders there at Leatherman. They, in fact, are developing this. This is their project, and they come and report into it to the coalition. We just helped them make some connections with post-vention providers, and the intent there is to establish a very warm handoff because we know that those that go in for crisis intervention and are stabilized are at the most risk to attempt suicide in the 12 days post-discharge. So this is about building out that process so they've got really warm support and that strong safety net around them in those post-discharge days. So next round's plans, one of the things that we had to table in terms of our initiatives was to design and implement a community health worker mental health care navigation program. We use community health workers extensively in the community now. DPH has them, most of our hospital systems has them, and their role is to be a care coordinator or a care navigator for a patient in the community to make sure they have access to care, they're getting into care, they're keeping their appointments, they're taking their medications, they're taking them the way they should, they have the right treatment team, and to help with that safety net. We don't see and have no report of, in fact, we engaged the person who's over the community health worker program for the state in this initiative team, and there is no reported use of community health workers for mental health care navigation at this point. But we think this is a perfect application of that role within mental health care that can make a tremendous difference in terms of that post-discharge transition plan, because the community health workers do that navigation and keep that close contact with the patient. So we are exploring that adoption of the community health worker concept. We've got support from those developers at the state level. We just need to find a grant, so we're looking for grant funding. And I'm starting to write for some of those. If you're aware of a grant, anything you could do to help us with that, we think there's tremendous potential. And the way that we would apply this as a pilot is involve this community health worker team with the transition team at Leatherman, and they would be a team positioned with Leatherman and PD Mental Health to actually go out and provide postvention care to those patients after stabilization. The last I'm really super excited to talk about, and I know this is long and deep, but is to infuse a focus on brain health into our community through churches, schools, healthcare providers, and counseling community, through a church program to teach parents and families Dr. Amen's Whole 4 approach to brain health, to teach parents how to care for and optimize brain development from pre-K all the way through 25, and to teach kids how to protect and love their brain through mentorship programs. We have elements in this place of these things in place already. We have pilots going with the Amen Brain Thrive to 5K and Brain Thrive to 25. We have a mentorship program called Brighter Futures that the Jonathan Foundation offers in collaboration with families and engagement. And starting in January, Dr. Amen has invited me to be an ambassador for the Amen Whole 4 for Faith Communities initiative. This is an initiative that he has worked with the White House Office of Faith and Paula White, the Faith Secretary. President Trump's vision is to bring faith back into government and into schools, and so Dr. Amen is a part of that team, and he has developed the Amen Whole 4 program for adoption within churches and faith communities. And as an ambassador, I will lead that effort in the PD, and I've also offered up our Building Brighter Days Coalition, and we've got a number of those folks who are also willing to serve as ambassadors and take this into their organizations. So we're looking to engage the Brighter Days Coalition and those community ambassadors in this work as well. And what Amen Whole 4 is doing is teaching really how to transform your body, mind, your soul, and relationships, and rewire your brain for more holistic mental health. And the way we get that is through focusing on our brain health. Dr. Amen's concept is we can end mental illness if we change the focus from mental health or mental illness to brain health, because then we start addressing the issue and correcting the cause. And we're committed to helping him take that vision. Deep and wide is our concept, deep and wide into our communities through the use of our community ambassador team. So I lastly want to invite you all to attend the 3rd Annual Brighter Days Conference. I will extend through Jessica VIP invitation as soon as we get those ready. They're not quite ready, but they'll be coming out soon. It'll be May 21st at the Florence Center. This conference brings together, so it's the vision for the conference from the beginning, brings together the targeted audience of healthcare and healthcare leaders, education leaders, first responder leaders. This year we're pleased with Chris's help to be able to add a track for military and veterans, so now their target audience, and parents and families. So we bring those 5 target audiences together and have a community conversation around suicide, and it has really been transformational in the PD, and it is a growing and developing body of work. This year, our keynote will be Dr. Daniel Amina, who is Dr. Daniel Amon's medical director for the Amon Clinics, and he is the author of the Suicide Solution, and he has a very unique approach to how we look at suicide and therefore how we can mediate for suicide. And I know that's a lot, and it was fast, so thank you for allowing me to get all that out. Do you have any questions for me? There's one more thing I would share if I could, and that is in terms of ask and what you guys might be able to help and support us with, is I'll be seeking a grant to fund the Safe Talk Living Works training for our community ambassador team. So we have 2 folks who are already trained as trainers. So we need the train the trainer training, and if you know anything about that, it's expensive. And so we want to train 10 more community ambassadors, and that is a cost of $12,500. So I'm seeking a grant for that as well. If you know of any sources, we would really appreciate that. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lynn.
Let me just leave this up or close it down, Jessica.
So let's move on to Jessica. She's going to give us the winner of the Suicide Prevention Campaign Award for this year. So go ahead, Jess.
So the coalition, we sent out an email, and it was distributed a lot farther than I thought it was going to go, which is a good thing to happen when you are trying to find champions in the community across our state. So this past month, we've had the honor of reviewing the nominations for the 2025 Suicide Prevention Champion Award. Each nomination showed admiration for the wonderful South Carolinians that have furthered suicide prevention efforts this year. Efforts range from one-on-one moments between our nominees and people in need to systematic changes being made in mental health programs and technology. Our nominees included clinicians and doctors from across the state, nonprofit founders and directors committed to suicide prevention, and individuals dedicated to reaching out to the community to connect and educate. You introduced us to new people new to their field who are making waves for suicide prevention, and highlighted people who have worked tirelessly in this community for decades. Each one of our nominees have put tremendous effort to be the support system South Carolinians need in the face of suicide. While only one nominee was selected for the award, all of the nominees have shown kindness, creativity, and determination in the name of suicide prevention, and we are grateful to you all for the work that you are doing. So I'm just going to take a moment and share who was nominated that was submitted. So we have Kathia Belvedere, Kathy Eckert, Rashonda Bonaparte, Lynn Bullock, Jessica Rogers, Eileen Schell, Mira Nazaman, Dennis Gillen, Phil Gilchrist, and Mac Shetter. So there are a couple here today, so if you could, and you are here, can you stand so we can just honor you for a second? So thank you all for all the work that you have done over the past year. So now I'm going to introduce who our champion is. So the 2025 Suicide Prevention Champion has been a part of the suicide prevention team at the Ralph H. Johnson VAMC for the last 8 years and is truly a leader among us. They serve as the main point of contact on the suicide prevention team for our PTSD clinic and for our substance use clinic STAR, and is well-liked and well-respected throughout our VA and our VISN for their professionalism, knowledge, and resourcefulness. They are often the first person on the team to volunteer to take warm handoffs from other providers seeking help in supporting a suicidal veteran being seen in person or over the phone. Just this year, they worked with local law enforcement and a veteran's family member to try to avoid a catastrophic outcome. Their experience, composure, and knowledge of this veteran and his participation in care made them one of our only team members who could have participated in this type of call. They also took a call where a veteran was having a mental health crisis on an international flight that was over 12 hours long, and coordinated with the veteran's family and the local VA in the veteran's destination to get this veteran to safety and medical treatment. This champion regularly participates in community events to promote suicide prevention efforts and trainings for the VA providers and community providers, and handles complicated situations with a level-headedness that many do not possess, and they are truly deserving of this type of honor. So congratulations, Jessica Rogers, as this year's 2025 Suicide Prevention Champion. If you could, come on up. As Dennis said, our state motto is "While I breathe, I hope." And then, and there will be another plaque with your name on it. That's going to be coming your way soon. But thank you for everything that you've done. That was only a little bit about what was submitted about you. So you've truly done work. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. Thank you so much. This is so special. Oh, I just have. Is this better? Okay. Thank you so much. This is very special to me. I really, want to accept this on behalf of everyone that devotes their lives to suicide prevention efforts. I have always felt like there's nothing more important. And I'm really grateful to this community because truly, it takes everyone and everyone's efforts to see the impact that we need to see. So I am just dedicated to continuing in this mission with all of you, and I really appreciate this so much.
Well done and well deserved. So this is an opportunity we take at the end of each meeting for partners who have something to pass along to us, announcement-wise, or other issues of mutual concern.
We are planning the next and last Hope Rising Conference. Will be Friday, February 27th, and I have about 10 flyers here, but I will ask Megan to send it out to the whole group. But if you want to go ahead and get a flyer, you're welcome. It'll be here in Columbia at the Phillips Market Center again. Thanks to the Office of Mental Health.
You're organizing it. You do.
Thanks, Eileen. Others?
Good morning. From the VA, South Carolina had 5,312 VCL calls, so 988 press 1. That's 28% of the Southeast region. Columbia had the second most calls, 2,977. Charleston had 2,335. So we answered those at 99.72% of the time in one day. So outstanding job from the VA. Columbia gave out 3,580 gun locks, and Charleston gave out 1,489. So going to the firearm safety, we are very involved in that. And Columbia had 587 Compact Act episodes. That's where a veteran presents to the community and gets immediate care. Charleston had 382. That's all FY25. So Columbia is ranked 16th in the nation in suicide prevention programming, and Charleston is ranked 25th in the nation. So a lot to be proud of here in South Carolina.
Thank you.
Since we're going on the theme here of VA here, just wanted to share some news here from the SEDVA in collaboration with our partners there, USDVA here on on December 22nd. I'm reading this off my phone here. There's going to be a VA stand down for our veterans in the greater Aiken area. That's going to be at New Ellington Community Center. There in New Ellington, South Carolina. It's going to be, they're going to have a resource fair from 10 to 12:30, and they're going to do a VA claims clinic from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. there as well. Also, would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the fact that we had wreaths across America for our South Carolina veterans here just Monday. They're at the State House, and also national Wreath Across America here in South Carolina is going to take place on this Saturday there, December 13th, at a multitude of different sites within South Carolina. I'm just going to highlight two of them real quick. One is going to be at Fort Jackson National Cemetery here on Saturday. That's going to be at noon. And also at the Florence National Cemetery, their ceremony starts at 10:30 a.m. And that's all I have.
Thanks. Others?
Hi. Shannon Nex with Skivasa. I'll just share that we have our webinar series that's for the public. Anyone can attend. That will be launching again January 2026. Our first one of the year is always about our legislative priorities, but the one in February I think is quite relevant, particularly with the last speaker. It's on domestic violence, traumatic brain injury, and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So we know domestic violence and sexual assault prevention is suicide prevention because of the high risk there, and particularly when you combine that with traumatic brain injuries. So that's February 20th from 1 to 2:30. It's virtual. And it's actually a researcher who's created a documentary called This Hits Home, which is about DV, TBI, and CTE. So I'll send that so y'all can get that out to everyone, the link. Yep.
Bill?
Just briefly, we will be having our annual state conference September the 3rd. I want to bring that up because it's been so successful, particularly the past 2 years. And while and there's a lot of programs we could talk about and highlight, I won't go into all those details for you, but we have just promoted our youth program director that's been doing our work in Ending the Silence and Go Lime Green and other initiatives around the state. And she is now the deputy director and is going to be doing some of our legislative work as Laura Moss, and she is here in the room as we speak. So get to know Laura. She's an up-and-coming person with NAMI, and a lot of good things to happen there. Thank you.
Dr. Banks, hey. Hey, it's Susan Jackson with the Violent Death Reporting System at South Carolina Department of Public Health. Just wanted to quickly share we have 2 new infographics available. One is suicide by overdose that should be posted this week. Just got approval for that. And then also our military suicides in South Carolina. These infographics are available on our webpage.
Great.
I did want to say one thing to everybody. The stickers that you have was actually designed by somebody in South Carolina for 988 Day. We did a I'm not even going to call it like a competition, but we were trying to bring awareness, and people could color in this circle about what it could have meant to them if they were reaching out. And then we decided to turn that into stickers. So I just wanted to explain the artwork on the stickers in front of you today.
Thanks again to Representative Rouse for being with us. How would you best suggest that...
Dr. Banks.
Yes.
I'm not Representative Rouse. I work for RepCom Hunter.
Oh, yes.
And I'm here representing RepCom Hunter, and she's very, very interested in mental health, always has been. And she called at the end of the day, as a matter of fact, after I spoke with Megan and Jess, she was so hoarse and sick, and she wanted to come, and she was saying, would you please come for me and represent me, because this work is so very important. I know you meet so many people. I sat and talked with you for an hour in our offices.
You sure
remember?
did.
I did.
It was about a year ago.
I did.
Yes.
You remember? Yeah.
So sorry for that misrepresentation there.
No, you have too many important things on your mind to remember all of House staff. But I just wanted you to know that I'll take this back. And with her being on Ways and Means, I'm sure that this will matter. And when you're dealing with your funding, and she may even be watching if she's well enough to watch. But she wanted to be here so much today because this is important work to her as a professional social worker. she will say that that is her first call, and her theme is doing things for the least of these. And to her, no one is really the least of these, but I guess whom those persons whom the world considers the least of these. So I, in my own private life, do a lot of work with this. And so she sent me because she felt that I would be able to represent her today. But representative, the work that I do from day to day is not what I really want to do at this time. But I do want to ask a question because I deal with so many of these cases, and I'm saying so many, probably within 2 years. And I love your staff, Jess, Meg, and Rob. They're great. But when someone is identified, let's say someone is identified in the system as bipolar schizophrenic, they've already been through the system, they were arrested because they didn't stop. I'm trying to figure out how, when they call us on the phone, the parent calls us, and they were stopped in Columbia, they went to a center, they were examined for whatever that period of time, and then 6 months later, they're in Rock Hill. And this is a real case in both of these representatives in Orangeburg area and Rock Hill. Then they're in the system again, and when I say system, as in incarcerated. And I'm calling everyone from the solicitor to the police chief, and we can't get them out. And it is the most frustrating, and the parents are calling, and they've already been identified as being bipolar schizophrenic. And we've been trying to figure it out by trying to put something on their license tags, but they don't want to do that because then it makes them a victim. So we don't really know what to do, and I know you're not going to answer this today, but handling 3 of those cases within a 2-year period, for me, was a lot because there are so many other issues going on that we handle as constituent service managers over there. And we don't really know how to navigate that system. And if you can give us some help, I would be most appreciative, and you can do that afterwards because I know that my other peers would also be interested in how to navigate that system because it seems so unfair if you're in one county and you've been identified and you've gone to a center and stayed your 150 days, and then you're now in an actual detention center. And they're, I guess, being paid for housing, for your being there. And I don't know if that is a reason to hold them, but they're holding them. And we're calling everyone from the solicitor on down, and we cannot get them out. So I love the work that you're doing for diversion, your initiatives in that. But kind of give us some help for now.
I think at the present time, the best thing you can do is get to our diversion group, our group diversion team. Robin could get you there, and we have lawyers and clinicians who can make at least an attempt to work with the solicitors and see if something can be worked out that's better for the person.
Yeah, because it's for simple things like traffic violations.
Exactly, minor things.
Right, yes, sir. All right, thank you so much. And congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing and our champion today. I guess maybe everyone here is a champion. So God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll call this meeting to an end, and I guess, Jess, you'll get the meeting dates out for next year?
And if you have anything you want us to send out with the meeting notes, send them to Megan, and we'll also send out the calendar holds for next year's meetings.